Made it through summer, which means that my favorite season of the year is coming. I'm so excited for fall. Summer is probably one of my least favorite seasons, and I am so excited that we're done with it and we're moving towards my favorite season, which is autumn. And to commemorate this beautiful occasion, I've put on a bold lipstick and I'm so ready to cleanse myself of everything summer and bring everything autumn into my life. And so I'm doing this video to kind of refresh, reset myself, reset my goals and what I want to achieve in this new season. So I think I want to start by doing some decorations. I know it's still very early to be thinking of Halloween or everything like that, but to me, the spirit of Halloween, it's throughout the whole entire autumn, and I don't really care that it's only one day in October. So I have a couple of extra hours today and I really want to get into that. And then after it, I also want to share with you my TBR for fall. So I'm so excited. Thank you for joining me. And before we get into the decoration or anything like that, I think it's very appropriate to make a fall themed coffee. Okay, we've decorated the house and now let's move into the most exciting part of this video, which is my fall TBR. The bold lip is out. I cannot take myself seriously with a bold lip on a Sunday afternoon. Most of these books are probably spookier reads. I do have a couple that are just more cozy and autumnal, but I think most of these are Halloween related because, as I said earlier, I just like to get a lot of spooky reads done in the whole entirety of the autumn, not only in October. And I've separated them into categories. We have classics and classic retellings, and then we have lighter reads, more contemporary types of books. Realistically, I don't think I'm going to read all of these books, obviously, but these are just the books on my TBR that I'm thinking about and from which I'm going to probably pick to read to get me in a spooky season mood. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm super excited. So let's start the TBR by talking about the classics on this list. The first classic that I have is the collection of short stories by Angela Carter, and it contains the very famous The Bloody Chamber by her. All I know about this is that the short stories are retold in a more gothic, sensual, very dark way, and it retells a lot of fairy tale like classics like the Red Riding Hood, Beauty and the Beast, so a lot of those fairy tales that we're very familiar with. I have read from Angela Carter The Magic Toy Shop last autumn and I absolutely adored it. Her writing style is so voluptuous, so sensual. She makes so many references to a lot of literary works. It's really amazing. I usually don't like to read short stories. They're just not long enough to capture my attention. But I do feel like with Angela Carter, I'm going to be able to enjoy all of them just because of her writing that is so amazing and perfect for this season. So every single October, I try to read a lengthier classic that is a bit more spooky. And for this specific Halloween season, what I want to get into is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I've never read this French classic before and I'm really excited to give it a try this season. I'm really not too sure what this is about except for the fact that it's set in the opera house in Paris and that it follows an opera singer and I think some guy that is haunting the opera house, and that a lot of people like to call the Phantom of the Opera because he's just living there and kind of like scaring people. That's really all I know about it, and I honestly do not want to know anything else, especially when I get into classics. I know that I'm someone who gravitates towards classics as it is, and so I don't really want to give myself more details on the synopsis because I'm probably gonna like it anyways, and so it's just a really nice surprise for me to go and discover all of the amazing things that the author did in the story without me knowing about it before. So speaking of classics that I tried to read every single Halloween season, last season what I read was Dracula by Bram Stoker, and so this season I want to read a little bit of a continuation on that story, and that is Dracul by Decor Stoker and J.D. Barker. I believe Decor Stoker is the grandson or great-grandson of Bram Stoker himself, and this story is an imagining of Bram Stoker's earlier life when he was writing Dracula, and I think even before he started writing Dracula, essentially just leading into what were some of the supernatural elements in his life that made him believe in things such as vampires, and then what led him to actually go ahead and write Dracula. I loved Dracula so much. I thought it was really well done. I loved how it got into the psychology of evil, especially at the beginning of the book. The second part of the book was a bit more plot forward, which was fine, but I really loved the beginning of the book, and so I'm really excited to read a bit more about the psychological elements of Bram Stoker himself and what might have led him to write Dracula. I heard a lot of people talk about it and I think a lot of people love it as well. So this will be a great pick for October nights. One of my favorite, if not my favorite classic of all time is Frankenstein, and I have two retellings on this list that I would like to get to hopefully this season. The first one is A Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi. This one, I think it's probably going to be very gruesome and very scary, but it's not that type of atmospheric gruesome. It's a completely different type of gruesome. It's a gruesome and a horror that is much more contextual in real life events. So we take the idea of a supernatural monster as such in Frankenstein and we apply it to real life situations. So this is set in the context of the war in Iraq. And we follow a person who decides to gather a lot of different body parts from people who have been disfigured and killed during the war and stitches them together in a way of remembrance of these people, in a way of giving them a way to be buried, because a lot of these victims don't receive a proper burial. But later in the story, this corpse that he creates based on different parts of the bodies from different people actually comes to life and starts to haunt the people in the city. So I think this is going to be a whole different type of horror and gruesome, and it's going to be based in a lot of contemporary issues that we have going on, and it's going to be one of those reads that is a bit more thought-provoking rather than just reading it for the sake of pleasure. The other retelling that I'm really excited to get to is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. In Frankenstein, we get to know the character of Elizabeth, but we don't get to know her as much, just because she's not the frontal character of the story. Elizabeth is essentially the betrothed of Victor Frankenstein, who is the scientist or the crazy scientist in Frankenstein. And she actually, more than being his betrothed, she was living with him and his family since she's a young girl. So his family have kind of adopted her and raised her, and she's been living alongside Victor for the majority of her life. And we get to see her perspective, which is not really well developed in the story of Frankenstein, about how she deals with Victor's cruelty and the crazy consequences of his scientific experiments. I purchased very recently this beautiful edition of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Other Short Stories by Washington Irving. I do not know very much about this story. I know that it's set in the town of Sleepy Hollow in, is it Massachusetts? I'm not from the US, so I need to brush up on my US geography, but essentially I think it's following a man who is in love with a woman and who wants to get to her, but there are certain things coming in the way of that. I have a very vague recollection that I watched the movie, the one with Johnny Depp, but aside from that, I don't know much more about the story. And yeah, I'm really excited. The last classic that I would like to pick up this season is We Have Always Lived in a Castle by Shirley Jackson. This one I don't have a physical copy of. I'm hoping to maybe acquire a physical copy during this season, and if not, I might just read it on Kindle. So I'm, again, not too sure what this one is about. I know that it follows a crazy family dynamic, a family who lives in a very secluded, isolated place, which is kind of their little castle, their little home that is despised by a lot of the neighbors that are surrounding them. But we do have a certain uncle or a cousin coming to visit, and when that uncle or cousin or whoever it is comes to visit, it kind of changes the dynamic of the family, and there's a lot of secrets and a lot of paranoia, and making this whole family dynamic something very horror-y, gruesome, and gothic in general. So yeah, I'm hoping to get to that one as well. Alright, so let's talk about some more contemporary reads that I want to get to. Two of them I've actually already started, and the rest I'm going to hopefully be making my way through throughout the season. The first book that I already started is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This one made the absolute rounds on YouTube. I mean, I feel like every single person has read this book already. This follows Mika, who is a witch, but she does not like to tell people that she's a witch, so she kind of lives the witchy life a little bit more isolated. But she does post a lot of YouTube videos or videos online where she teaches people how to be witches, but it's all under this impression of, I'm not actually a witch, I'm just teaching you how to be a witch as this kind of fun thing, but we both know I'm not actually a witch. She receives a very mysterious email inviting her to go to Nowhere House, where apparently 3 young witches live. They live with a couple of people who are taking care of them, but they are not witches, so they don't know how to take care of witches. And they asked Mika whether she would like to take on this job to basically be a caregiver for these 3 young witches and teach them magic. I'm really only just at the beginning of the story where Mika has accepted to go and is now just kind of entering Nowhere House. The story so far seems to be a bit boring to me. I think it's just a bit too cozy, not a lot of high stakes, but I'm hoping that this will develop a bit more. I mean, I am just at the beginning of the story, so hopefully the plot will thicken a little bit and I'll have a little bit more to get excited about while I'm reading this book. But yeah, so far so good. I'll keep you posted on this. The next book that I've already started, and I am actually almost done with it, is The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This one follows a very interesting concept. So we follow 3 different timelines. The present day timeline is the timeline of a young grad student. She's doing her PhD and her thesis is focusing on this peculiar horror work that is very difficult to access. So we follow her trying to access this horror work that she's really intrigued by, trying to write her dissertation on and trying to discover more about the details of the author and how that story got to be written. We also follow that student's grandma back in the 1900s, like the beginning of 1900s, where she was dealing with the disappearance, the very mysterious disappearance of her brother. And she's also dealing with a very difficult mom and uncle who are not really being responsive and understanding of her concerns about the disappearance of her brother. So she's trying to kind of uncover that mysterious secret on her own. And then we also have an additional timeline in the 1930s where we follow the author of the story that the grad student is trying to uncover. So all of those kind of obviously merge together and it's really interesting. I am really liking it. I have read in the past from this author, what was that book that was really famous? Was it Mexican Gothic? I did not like that one as much. I thought it was just okay. I thought that some of the elements were a bit too stretched. But I'm really enjoying this one. I'm not really a big fan of romances, but when I heard about this book and I heard the premise of it, I'm like, okay, I need to read it. It feels like everything that I would want for a cozy autumnal reading. It's not as much spooky or Halloweeny, which is different than anything else on this list, and it's If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. So this one follows, I think, the format of a 1990s vintage rom-com that is set in Vermont during fall. So I think that just that one-liner right there is anything that I need to know about this book. It follows a young woman named Michelle who is recently divorced and she's grieving that divorce that she's had. At the beginning of the book, Michelle learns that her mom has passed away, and so she has to move to the small town of her parents and start to take on the responsibilities of the inn that her mom has left for her, where she meets Cliff, a single dad who is also living in that small town. And that's really all I know about this book. I think it's going to be just a charming little cute romance for autumn, and I'm really excited to pick it up. Next, I have something that I think is considered to be YA, and that's The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This one I think is much more dark than a lot of the stories on this list. I think it's very gothic. I think it follows 3 different perspectives of 3 girls that end up coming together for one big purpose. So we have the main character, Zara Jones, who has recently been dealing with the murder of her sister, which has been really difficult for her to cope with. And so she decides to embark on a journey to see if there's any way that she could get her sister back. We also follow Jude, who essentially made a deal with the devil, and so now her soul is cracked in a lot of pain and a lot of misery, and she's hoping to find a solution to reverse this bad decision that she's made. And then we have Emmer, who has this beautiful gift of doing something called the Invocations, where she can help different types of women that are in very difficult situations, such as Zara and Jude. And I think that's where their paths all emerge. I don't know, it sounds very dark, very intriguing, and I might give it a try this autumn. Okay, and the last book that I want to pick up this autumn is Bewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. And this one follows Belle, who is a 30-year-old witch. She's a little bit burnt out. She deals with a very difficult boss. She is managing a bookshop, but she's also a witch, and she has to do certain trials and prove herself to her coven, who are starting to be more and more unsure that she is good enough to hold her powers. That's really all I know about it. It looks super cozy. So many people talked about this one last year, and I would really love to pick this one up for a cozy time. All right, there you have it, all of the books that I'm trying to pick up this autumn. As I said before, I'm probably not gonna pick all of these. They're just gonna be like my big list of spookier reads that I want to gravitate towards, because I do want to make space for other types of book that I might want to pick up this autumn, and so I can't probably get to all of these. So there you have it. Thank you so much for joining me in resetting for autumn. I'm so excited to transition to this new season. I have so many ideas for content that I want to film with autumn related things, so I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a busy season for me, but I'm going to also try my best to enjoy it. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any additional suggestions for books that I could read this autumn, or let me know your TBR for autumn. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.